Hello and welcome to the April edition of the Win 911 webinar series. My name is Brian Ardaugh and we will be discussing today the enhancements, terminology, and I'll walk through basic configuration of our software. We will get started today by going over our technical resources we have available. I'll provide a product demonstration, and that way we can walk backwards and show you some of the terminology required and understand a walkthrough of our scenario. We'll go ahead and start with our terminology and our resources available for you. On our Win 911 website, if we go to the Resources tab, under the drop-down, we'll go ahead and show you the first thing. Since we're in a webinar, I'll show you the webinar series. You have notifications about upcoming webinars. This is the current one that we're in, but for each month, you'll see a webinar update, and you can register here, or if you're available on our email list, which most of you are, you can email that way about it. Past webinars, last month we talked about some applications from user stories that we had and case studies. And previously in January, we showed you an upgrade utility used to transfer your previous version of the software, version 7, to a new version of the software called Win 911 Standard, Interactive, and Advanced. The next one is the how-to video. This is a very helpful link. I'm a visual learner, so it comes in handy for us type of visual learners. You can walk through step by step and you can see some of anything from our terminologies and our roles and schedules and tactics to how to set up a specific SCADA, whether it's InTouch, iFix, or whoever it might be. There's also information about our licensing and getting started information. The next one we have is our documentation. We make all of our documentation readily available. We have some online manuals, some installation guides, and you can go through here and you can do searches and filter through the document to make sure you can find the information you're looking for directly online. The next is our support window, and in our support window we have what's called our knowledge base. In our knowledge base, we have more advanced information about articles, about licensing, some key troubleshooting tips, or whatever it might be. We're always updating the articles with new knowledge base articles, and this is a good place to look for those types of things for more detailed information. Continuing on with our presentation we have here, the last thing I want to remind you about is our LinkedIn page. If you follow us on there, we have more information about our upcoming events we will be attending. We also post things about our webinars and events so you can get more information from Win 911. Okay, let's get started with our live demonstration of our product. So we'll use this as a configuration to show you the configuration later on. You'll be able to better understand the process and what the alarming sequence looks like. So getting started, we have an iFix SCADA. It doesn't matter what your SCADA is. We're just trying to get some alarms into our Win 911. Once the alarms are into Win 911, the process for configuring the alarming sequence is very similar. So it's not a lot of changes. So don't be alarmed that this is a iFix and you're an InTouch or Rockwell guy. That's not the point. So we start off with an alarm. This is the coolant level alarm. Going back to what we talked about last month, we mentioned proactive notifications. This is a refrigeration system. So think of this alarm that I just started off as a proactive notification, because refilling the coolant and doing that regular check, that might be a standard maintenance thing. But if this is forgotten, it might cause a high temperature alarm or really cause major issues with our refrigeration system. So staying on top of things, you can save downtime, increase your productivity, and just have more visibility into your system. Whatever the alarm might be, we started it off, and this alarm is going into our technician's email box. I'm going to pull up his box, and we can see over here just a minute ago, we set off this alarm, and we have a notification from the Win 911 gateway. This is an example of what their basic configuration looks like in our email. It's a very standard. It shows that the alarm is active, the tag or block name, whatever you call it, is set here. It shows the severity that's changed from normal. Now with Win 911, the advantage we have is that we have two-way notifications, which means that we can both receive these alarms and we can remotely acknowledge them. For this user, I have them set up to remotely acknowledge. They can acknowledge at any reply. So I just send out a blank reply. It's replying to that Win 911 gateway. And now if I go over to my SCADA, eventually this will go through with a acknowledge. It depends on your internet speed and connection, things like that. I'm on Wi-Fi, it might take a little bit longer, but this will go through with an acknowledgement right there. In the meantime, I'm going to show you some troubleshooting tips we have here for you. There's our Win911 log viewer. It's available through the Win911 for the Windows browser. Clicking on log viewer, you can pull up to see which alarms are active. This says refrigeration coolant level and says the iFix and tells you what strategy it is. Now, if you double click on these, you can get some more information. It tells you exactly this email was dispatched to Ryan, it's successful. It sent another notification to him saying that, hey, this is acknowledged because we have it set up for that. And you also can look through here, you can see some of the acknowledgements. This shows you just that. Ryan acknowledged email. What if somebody else acknowledged it that you didn't know about? You can see who did that. And later on we'll talk about tactics and strategies, but you can also check to see which tactic and strategy this alarm went through and any state changes and things like that. So over here you can see that we went through and the alarm was remotely acknowledged by that little checkbox. So I'll go ahead and close out a log viewer. But again, very handy tool, especially if you're troubleshooting, configuring. You can start off, make sure, just set up a couple alarms, push them through the user, and watch them go through this. Make sure your tactics and strategies are configured from the start, especially starting off with a brand new system. I'm going to go ahead and turn this alarm off. We acknowledge it. I'm going to turn off the coolant levels and bring everything back to normal. And we're going to go out of our VM, and we'll pull up my presentation again, and we'll go from there. All right, now we're going to go through a comparison of our previous product to our new software called Win911 Standard Interactive and Advanced Licenses. The advantage of our software, our newer version of our software compared to version 7, we have the runtime all the time, meaning that you can go ahead and configure and save, and it's active. It's going to run. It's going to apply to any alarms, whatever filters you might put in. This is going with it right now. And I'll show you as I do the configuration. We have a browser-based configuration for this. With our software, we also have the ability to do some alarm filters. We can filter by alarm name, severity, block type. Depending on your SCADA, certain SCADAs allow for different types of alarm filtering, but it is available in our new software. Also, we have what's called the advanced alarm escalation, and I'll show you some of these examples where we walk through what's kind of looks like a state machine, a colored chart, step by step of where it goes, is it on or off, and shows you the full sequence of the alarm going through. It's a very visual process. It's handy for configuring, and it's new in our standard interactive and advanced software. Finally, we support our software in 9 different languages. For example, if you're in Canada and you need French or Spanish, whatever it might be. Continuing on with these license levels, we have the standard, the interactive, and advanced. The standard level, you have we offer a couple different notification methods, including SMS, email, voice, and we have a mobile app. In the standard package, we're only allowed to have the email and SMS. And this is a very basic level of our software, just to do some notifications. Our interactive license of our software, this is where it gets into the two-way direct connect notification. As I did in my example, I showed you I was able to both receive that alarm and send an acknowledgement. That's a two-way direct connect notification. This feature is available on our interactive or on our advanced license of their software. Another feature that starts to become available on our interactive is availability to do reporting. What reports are, it might give you more information about the alarm. Previously, I showed you the coolant level alarm, and I showed you what the email looked like. Well, you might also be able to create a report that requests information on what's the status on this valve and is this piece of equipment on, and help you do some of the troubleshooting, because maybe you're receiving that alarm because someone's doing maintenance and they forgot to turn something off. So on the interactive version of the software, you have what's called a report request. You're able to type in report, request that information from Win911, and it'll give you a status back on certain items, whatever you configure. On our advanced level of our software, we have everything available on the previous ones, plus we have the ability to do a report push, meaning the alarm goes off. We can push out data and says, it gives you that information on that valve or whatever it might be, along with the alarm. And that's used for troubleshooting techniques. Now, reports, they are not available on all SCADA packages. They're only available with iFix and InTouch, along with OPC. So if you want to do any reporting, that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, the other feature that's available on our advanced license of our software, regardless of your SCADA, is those advanced type of flowchart tactics and strategies, we call them. And I'll show you how we configure those and the advantage of using those and how we come up with the configuration process. Okay, now that we have an idea of that, the software, I'm going to go ahead and show you an application. The application that I started off is a basic refrigeration system I took from one of our applications we had used for a case study. And with this, it's basic refrigeration systems. We have motor overloads, low pressure, system check, and refueling the coolant. Now these two, the compressor motor overload and low pressure, these might be more of a critical alarm, might need to go to a certain person. Where these system check and refill, these might be more of a technician-based alarm. They might go, they might be used for proactive notification for such things as your basic maintenance, keeping your system up and running rather than waiting until something's down. That's an example of proactively notifying someone rather than waiting until the system be down. So alarms don't always have to be the building's on fire, the system's broken. It could be something to keep up with your system, check a bearing, check on a motor, do your regular maintenance. You can notify on these things, keep that system up and running. That's the value add of the proactive notification. Whatever the alarm might be, we have a full alarm list that we're going to use for this application. Okay, so this alarm list, you might have these very long, cumbersome tags, refrige, compress, whatever, overload, whatever it might be, filler or photo eye. And the idea here is that you want to be able to start grouping and figuring out the common themes between your alarms. So the common themes between your alarms, that's going to dictate who you're going to notify on and who you're going to send these alarms to. So understanding your system, that's how you come up with these groupings. If I'm watching the webinar again, I would go ahead and pause and start to see who I'm starting to group these to and kind of get an idea for the grouping of your alarms. Once you know how to group your alarms, and it comes into what people you want to notify. And in this is our notification schedule. And if I'm watching the webinar again or just right now live, I would go ahead and take a screenshot of this because this is something that we're going to use during the configuration process. Now walking through this, as you can see, I have operators, techs, engineer, and a manager. And in here, people have a role, a shift, a time, and a non-call schedule, this example. Your role is nothing more than your job title. We have operator, tech, engineer, manager. Your shift is your schedule, similar to Outlook calendars. You have your day shift, your afternoon shift, your 7 to 3s, your 3 to 11s, and your 8 to 5s for managers. We also create a role called on-call, and this is something that can bounce between people. If you use advanced tactics and strategies on our advanced license or software, you can do a role-based notification. For example, if this person's on call and on the weekends, this week an alarm goes off, it might go to Frank. But if next week he's on call, you move the label over to this person, Ryan, then he's on call, then the alarm's going to go to him. And we'll go through some of this advanced notification process. Okay, one thing people sometimes struggle with in our software is our terminology. I'm going to walk you through some of the setup and the terminology and break down that to help you understand the setup. Once you understand the terminology, I believe that the configuration process becomes a lot easier. How does our system work? A quick overview. Whatever your SCADA might be, again, we're using GE in this example, but that doesn't really matter. Whatever your SCADA might be, you're bringing in some data, you're bringing in some alarms and some information. Eventually, it's going to go to Win 911. What Win 911 is going to do is going to start from the dispatching process. And this is going to notify the user via your voice, your email, your SMS, or your mobile. Going back to that two-way notification, you also have the ability to receive those alarms and acknowledge them back to the SCADA. And that's the quick rundown of how Win 911 is working together. Terminology, a couple of these are very basic. I'll run through these ones, but you have your connections, as I was mentioning, these are your people in your phone book. Going back to that list of people I have, where your operator, tech, these are all the people I have. They're just nothing more than a phone book contact. You also have your roles, and these are groups of people, your operators, your techs, your managers, your engineers, your on-call role, whatever it might be. Each person in your in Win911 should be assigned not only their name, their contact information, but also have their roles. And in Win911, we also have the ability to schedule, to create schedules, and these can be day shift, night shift, bi-weekly, holidays, whatever it might be. You use an Outlook style calendar, and I'll show you step by step how you do this and how you create one. And in this example, we made like a bi-weekly rotation. This can change off, and you could be turning alarms on and off for certain people depending on if they're on a certain schedule. The next piece of the terminology comes down to filters, and depending on your SCADA, you can filter on different pieces. You can filter on your tag or block name, your area, severity. This comes back into grouping up your alarms depending on who you want to notify, what the event is. Maybe certain severities go directly to the engineer. Maybe if it's in the north building, it goes to a certain supervisor, whoever it might be, or whatever it might be. You can filter your alarms as you bring them into Win911. And then with the alarms, you can put labels on these on severity, or if it's a safety alarm, or if there's a leak, it might go to a safety officer, whatever it might be. Putting labels on alarms is a value add and helps you filter through as you're doing different tactics and strategies. You can pull out, you can color things up, and you can see a certain alarm stand out. This is a key item for our terminology, and I'm going to spend some time on this, make sure we really understand this, and reiterate this throughout the video. Tactics and strategies. How this whole process works is some event happens. Okay, you have some alarm that comes into your SCADA and then eventually into Win911. That event is going to start a strategy. A strategy is a policy of when to take action. It's a starting and stopping of a call-out list. That call-out list is a tactic. This is the action of what to take and who to contact. So clicking through this, we have an event that happened. This is from our example that I showed you with my email. The refrigeration compressor coolant level alarm happened. Then what was the next thing that happened? We started off a strategy. The strategy I named was called advanced maintenance. This defined when to start, stop, and notify people. From there, this strategy kicked off the tactic. This began to call out the certain people. In my example, the first person to notify was a technician. Had we waited more time, it eventually escalate and notify an engineer. Going back, a quick reiteration, your event happens, your tag or trigger comes in with this alarm. It starts off a strategy, defines the policy of when to start, stop, re-notify, and this strategy launches the call-out list of people of who you're going to notify. Okay, an example of our strategy, again, a policy of when to take action. Going back to our license levels that I was talking about a couple slides back in the intro, this is an example of something that's available on an advanced license. We do have basic strategies, but the one shown on this specific slide is for the advanced license only. And walking through again, the initial event happened, we started a tactic. This tactic example is called WTP storage tanks. In this strategy, we're defining if any alarm state changes, we're going to re-notify people. If the alarm becomes acknowledged, we're going to stop the strategy. No more notification of people. But you can also do things like, upon a repeating timer, go ahead and re-notify people after 20 minutes. So one thing to keep in mind here is they're not exactly, these events that are here are not exactly sequential. Once the strategy has been started, we're going to look at any of these things. So for example, if we start the initial event, it starts this tactic, and this tactic has, for example, contacting an engineer, and then after 30 minutes, you're going to notify a manager. Well, if after 20 minutes, only at that point, since we have a 30-minute delay before notifying the manager, after 20 minutes, we're going to do a re-notify. But since the manager has not been contacted yet, the only person we're going to re-notify is the person who's been already notified. And that person who's already been notified is the engineer. So 20 minutes has gone by, the manager hasn't been contacted yet, so we're going to notify only the engineer. Now, for example, if 40 minutes goes by now, since the start alarm, 40 minutes has gone by. By then, the engineer has been notified, and after 30 minutes, the manager have been notified. So this 20 minutes has gone off again. Now we're going to re-notify. We're going to re-notify the engineer and manager in this case. Eventually, if the alarm becomes acknowledged, we're going to stop the strategy. Or if the alarm changes state, we're going to go ahead and re-notify all those people, let them know that something has happened. This is an example of those policies that you put in place for your call list and policies for when you start and stop your actions. That's the definition of your strategy. Tactics come in both your basic and advanced license. Any license level offers a basic tactic. The one shown here is an example of basic tactic. And tactics are nothing more than a call-out list. So that's something to keep in mind. Just if you're thinking of a tactic, think about a call-out list of who you're going to contact. In this quick example, this tactic is started. We're going to email Bob. We're going to email Alice, email Joe. Eventually, we're going to contact the on-call phone. Then after 10 minutes, we're going to contact Michael via email. So basic tactics are very sequential down the line, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through. So tactics are nothing more than the call list of who you want to contact. Now the advanced tactic, available in the advanced license of our software only, this is that state machine, this is that flow chart that I was showing you that's very handy to have in our advanced license. Now going back, our event has happened, for example, that coolant, the strategy has started some tactic. Now in this tactic that's shown here, let's say we have this label that came through, this tag that came through, has a label called WTP storage tanks. If this alarm has this label to it, then it's going to go to the right. If this alarm does not have this label to it, it goes to the left. It's gone to the right, we continue. Does this alarm have a severity of greater than 750? Yes, go this way. No, go this way. No, we're going to wait 10 minutes and then we're going to contact the WTP operator group. Yes, we're going to immediately contact the WTP operator group and then notify the managers. So this event happens and the alarm happens, the tag goes through, it starts a strategy. The strategy goes through on this green dot and starts going through the policy of who to contact using this call out list action. Eventually gets down to the call out of contacting these people or contacting these people. Now coming all together, I'll reiterate again, so this tag or alarm event goes through, the event is filtered through, and it's deciding which strategy, which policy to put in place for starting and stopping. That strategy is starting your tactic, and it's deciding when to start, stop, and re-notify. So this strategy starts off this operators and managers tactic, and in this tactic, it starts at the green bubble, and we're going to go ahead and notify the operators. We're going to wait 20 minutes, and we're going to contact the managers. So event has happened, we do the alarm, it does the filter, it starts off some strategy. The strategy defines which policies to put in place for starting and stopping, and it kicks off your strategy, your tactic, your call out list. The call out list goes through 1, 2, 3, and does that to notify the appropriate people. Next, I'm going to go ahead and show you the setup of the email notifier, which is the demo we did. One thing I want you to keep in mind here is that even though I'm doing email, the configuration process for setting up your tactics, your strategies, and things of that nature, and bringing in your alarms, it's all the same process regardless of your SCADA or regardless of your notifier. So don't get locked in that, oh, email is that much different. The configuration process for all those things is the same. It's your gateways and maybe some of your hardware that changes across the different notifiers. For those of you who are familiar with version 7, one thing we want you to keep in mind here is we're not going to bring in the tags or blocks first. We're going to do that at the lab for the final thing. And the reason is it makes it simpler to do all the configuration up front for how you want your alarms to deploy and who you want to notify. And then finally we'll be piecing together the people of who to contact. And again, with your alarms, you can do filtering on your areas. You can do by priority. You can do by tag names. Whatever it might be, depending on your SCADA. We can do some filtering process to bring in those alarms. Okay, the configuration process, it's a left to right process. When you're in Win911, you'll see that all these tabs open. And don't be overwhelmed, because as you go through these one by one in the demo I'll show you, it makes more sense, and it's not overwhelming as you might think it might be. So we're going to start left to right. We're going to go contact, notification, alarming, and then reporting if we use it. So contact, you go ahead and you can configure your gateway. That's how you get to the outside world. In this example with email, it's going to be our server information and passwords and security in that. We're going to find our people with our roles, our schedules, and connections. The next tab over here, we're going to go through and we're going to configure our tactics and strategies. So we're going to find our tactics, our call-out list, and we're going to find our strategies, our policies of when to take action. Next, we'll go through and we'll configure our alarming, and this is where you go ahead and you configure your SCADA or OPC. For this example, we're going to be talking about iFix, but regardless of your SCADA, you also want to make sure that we configure our watchdogs, health alarms, and if something goes down with your SCADA or something goes wrong with like a heartbeat, you stop, your PLC loses a heartbeat. Well, you want to alarm on that so you can configure your watchdogs for that sort of thing. So watchdogs and health alarms are something that's very crucial, because alarming, this is your last line of defense. You want to make sure you notify the right people. Well, if something goes down in your system and you can't notify people, or so if something goes down in your system, you want to make sure the right people get there. If you lose a heartbeat on a critical piece of system, that's something worth notifying on, and we can allow you to do that in our software. Finally, reporting. I don't show you a reporting setup, but if you go back to the video link that I showed you at the beginning of our demo, what I showed you on our Win911 website, there's a whole video that talks about reporting. And reporting is only available for InTouch, iFix, and for OPC. Also, if you want to do this feature, it requires the interactive or advanced license of our software. Okay, now I'm going to go through. Now that we did the full presentation, I'm going to show you the step-by-step setup of how I configured our demo to shoot off that alarm and how we got to the end user. Okay, we open up Win911, and the first thing, again, left to right, we're going to do our contact. And as you can see here, we have our different notifiers, email, mobile, whatever it might be, SMS. We're going to do our email setup. So we're going to go through here, our email, and we're going to set up our gateway. And our gateway is, how are you reaching the outside world? And I already have this set up, but just to kind of show you what I did, you're going to figure out your type, you figure out your host, your port, your email gateway information. All this information can be provided by your IT department or whoever you might be working with. And eventually, if you want, you can, once you get this information configured, you can do a little test outgoing server settings, and this will test and verify an email went through. So if I were to actually pull up this gateway email, it would have a little welcome message for me. Now, the incoming messages, since we configured the two-way direct connect in our example, oftentimes this information is the same. But for this is just how are you sending information back into our system. And again, you can get this information from your IT department, but this is a quick, brief intro of what we have set up for our gateway. The next thing we're going to go through is we're going to set up our roles. Now, let's pull this little list back up if you had a screenshot of this earlier, but you had your operator roles, your tech, your engineer, your manager. Each of these people had a different role. What we're going to do is we're going to create a role label for all of these people. Now we go contact, roles. In here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, I have mine all configured, but all you do is you click the little plus box over here, and you can create a name. You call it system engineer, whatever it might be. You can give them a description, you can change a color, and then when you're done, you would go ahead and save, and then it would populate it over there. Very easy to use, easy to create a label. For each person, I make sure that you create their own role. Since I already have my role set up, I'm going to go ahead and discard. One thing I want to make you aware of is this utilizer tab. This utilizer tab will pop up a lot of different places, and the purpose of this is that you can go through and you can see where this person's name is utilized. You can see if they're using a certain tactic, if they're using a certain strategy, if they're part of a certain schedule. And this is helpful if you're trying to add or delete things. If you try to delete something, it'll say, hey, this is used by or utilized in some area of a program. Okay, so we've configured our roles. We added all of our engineer, manager, operators, on-calls, and technicians. The next thing we're going to go through is the schedule tab. Okay, contact schedule. And again, going back to this little handout screenshot, we have, which schedules do we have? We have 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., we have 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and we have 8 to 5. Okay, so again, to create a schedule, you go ahead and create the plus. I've already created some of mine, but I'll show you step by step how we do this. So today is April 17th. It doesn't really matter. You can start from previous day if you want, but you go ahead and you double click on a little calendar, and this is an Outlook style configuration of our calendar. So let's go ahead and start with our operator, our day shifts rather. So I'm going to call it day shift A, day shift A, okay? And you go ahead and configure a start time. So today is the 17th. We want to start at 7 a.m. is this time. And then you want to start doing end time. One thing you need to make sure you note on here is, see how it says 17th, the 18th? Make sure you get the appropriate day on there. We're going to do the 17th, you want to end on the 17th of the shift, and then it's going to end at 3 p.m. Close. 17th, 7 a.m., 17th, 3 p.m. Next, we want to do the reoccurrence because this is a continuing schedule. This is a small plant. Let's assume they only work Monday through Friday. You click all the days you want it to do. And then next, you just go ahead and you click OK. It says 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 8-hour shift. Click OK. Click OK. And then now on my schedule, you can see I have day shift A, and this is a continuing repeating event for our schedule. I already have my schedules configured, so normally you would go ahead and save. I'm going to go ahead and close this because I don't need this. But I configure the same schedule for our afternoons, and I do the same process for managers and engineers. One thing to note, though, is that managers and engineers, I actually have a standard hours schedule. Some of these schedules that are set up here, they're default, or they already come set up and configured in our software. So if you want, you can go ahead and you can use some of these as your default for your program. For engineers and managers who work 8 to 5, I just use a standard hour shift, which is available pre-configured in our software. Okay, now the next thing we've done, now we have our roles, we have our schedules, we're going to go ahead and do our connections. For each person, we're going to configure an email connection. So we're in contact, email, connection. And again, I have all my people set up, but normally you just hit the plus sign here. I'll show you, for example, Brian, because it's me and I'm an engineer. And again, you give them a name, you give them a title or description or what you want to do, you put their email address in, and then for each person, the next two things are very important. You want to make sure that you configure them to have their schedule. So again, this is where you select that schedule. You can drop down. I have day shift, never, standard hours, afternoon shift, whatever it might be. You go ahead and you configure the schedule. The next one is for every person you have, you should have a role assigned to those people. Those are the roles that we created earlier. And this is going to be handy when you're going through and you're deciding which people to notify on. If you're just filtering through a list, you can scroll, see colors. It makes it visually pleasing and easier to do the configuration process if you have roles for each person. So with that, for each person, you go ahead and send a welcome message, and it'll say welcome message sent successful, and that verifies the person's email. A couple other things you want to go through in the formatting for the connections is you see all these other tabs across the top here. Going back to the format, I had a basic format set up for this engineer or technician, whoever it might be. But you can also configure some of our other different type of formats for our notifications. So with that, you can pick whichever one it might be, long, more information, short, or you can configure your own. And that's done in the Format tab if you want to configure your own. Typically, I just use some of the pre-configured, but it's up to you and how you want to go ahead and use our software. Report, you can do some similar thing. You can change around the report format. I don't demo the reporting in this example, but I also have that video that shows you reports under our resources page, the how-to videos. And previously, if you remember, I showed you the acknowledge. And when an email went to my technician, I did acknowledge on any reply. I just sent a blank email. And this is how I did that. You can configure this for any person you want. Maybe you don't want somebody to acknowledge something, and you can block them from doing that. And you can also configure a password if it's something very secure. You want to make sure they're not just thumbing through emails, reply. You can make sure that they reply on password. Alarm request options, that's pretty basic. I won't go through that right now. And again, we're back to our utilizers. This shows you where each person is utilized. Okay, now for every person, I went ahead and I configured the same process. I gave each person a shift, I gave each person email, I gave each person a title. So, for example, going through our list of people here, our manager, they have a manager title. Ryan's our technician, he has afternoon shift. I gave every person a schedule, I gave every person an email, gave every person a role. So under each notifier you have, if you have, for example, an email and an SMS, you're going to go ahead and you're going to configure each person under that, each notifier using a similar fashion. Okay, so we've gone through the first tab here. We've done the contact tab. This is number 1. Again, the next thing left to right we do is number 2. We're doing the notification tab. In this notification, we have our tactics and strategies. I'm going to show you first how to set up a tactic. Your tactic is your call-out list of actions of what to do and who to call. Okay, so that call-out list that I had for that email that the technician, this is exactly what it looked like. But again, you would just go ahead and create plus and make your own. So in the edit mode, okay, we're in our edit mode. You give it a name. The name of this tactic is called advanced maintenance. This, however, is a basic version of it. This version of configuration is available on any version of the software. It doesn't matter which license level. So this tactic, what this is doing is it's going through the list of contacting Frank, technician, contacting Ryan, technician, contacting Brian as the engineer, and then contacting Jill as the manager. All right, so we'll look at our list again. Now remember, for the technician, they have a day shift and the afternoon shift. Well, right now it's 4:30, so it's afternoon shift. So what that means is that Ryan's going to get the notification. So going back to our software, it's going to skip over Frank because Frank is on day shift. So when this tactic is actually in action, it's skipping Frank and it's going to notify Ryan. After 5 minutes, he doesn't respond. 5 minutes, 50 seconds, he doesn't respond. It's going to email him again. So long, he doesn't respond, going to escalate to this engineer. So long they don't respond, contact him again, and then so on, all the way up to the manager. And this is basically a very sequential event list of who's being notified. If you had other notifiers, for example, an email, or I'm sorry, an SMS or a voice, whatever it might be, you could put them in this tactic as well. So this notification setup is not limited to just the email, but for right now, I only have the email configured. So it's a very sequential line of events. In this example, once it gets down to the end, what happens? Well, this is going to repeat the loop 3 times. So it goes down this full list of contacts, loop 3 times, loop 1, 2, 3. And then it's going to depend on what the strategy does for the rest of this. So that's an example of a basic tactic available on any license level of our software. Next, I'm going to show you one of our advanced tactics. Okay, so our advanced version of our tactic, what this looks like, we have the example called system config. What this advanced tactic looks like, as you can see, we have basic and we have advanced. I'm going to go ahead and edit this so I can show you some more information about it. And make sure I zoom out so I can get the full thing in here. Basic, advanced, okay. Scrolling back and forth. Make sure it draws correctly in here. Okay, so our advanced version of our tactic, what this is doing is now some strategy has happened, some alarm has happened. That alarm started a strategy, started a policy. That policy decided to take this tactic and start this action, this call out list. So this alarm has happened, green dot. Now this is going to go ahead and contact our engineers. It's using the notification of all to notify all engineers. In this case, it's notifying Brian. After 1 minute and 15 seconds, if he doesn't respond, it's going to do this loop again. Contact them using all the notification methods they have. It's going to do this 3 times, and then eventually it'll escalate this up to managers. Now, how do you create these additional notification blocks? This is an example of that state machine I kept talking about using our advanced software. We have these little notification blocks. This is a notification all block. It's notifying all engineers. We also have blocks such as you can filter on schedule, do something like, okay, is it a certain time of day? Yes, go this way, notify a technician, no, notify somebody else. Or you can do this label block, which is assigned to label on, is checking for a label of, for example, a safety label on a block or tag. And if it's a safety, you can check to see it's going to go here to go one way. If not, it's going to go another way. You also do things like timers, or time span block. And you also have these loops in a delay block, which I have set up here. So it's just a matter of reading through and understanding what you want to notify on and how. So for each of these blocks, all you need to do is you need to just drag and drop them over to the line becomes blue, and you can put them in your sequence. Now, for anywhere that you're in Win911 software, it doesn't matter if it's this page for configuring your tactics or if it's for your strategies, your alarming, whatever it might be. You always have access to more information. And you click on that little help button up there on the top right corner, and it'll bring you to information directly related to the page that you're on. Now on this page, all you have here is, we're talking about tactics and strategies. So it's going to show you information about tactics, and it's going to show you all these information. So I was talking about those blocks. Here's information on what they do and how you can use them. And it's up to you to go through this, and you have that resource available for your own use. Okay, so basic tactic and this little bubble here, that's available on any license level. The advanced tactic, this is available only on the advanced license of our software. And it's something to keep in mind depending on how you want to configure and what you want to do with our software. So we've showed you how to configure your tactics. Those are your call-out list of who to contact. Now we're going to show you those policies. We're going to show you those policies of what actions to take depending on what the alarm is doing. Okay, the first one I'm going to show you is our maintenance tactic, and this is a maintenance strategy. This is a basic strategy. This is available on any license level. And as you can see here, you just go ahead, you edit, you give it a name and description, and this will start off a tactic. So this strategy is going to start off the tactic called advanced maintenance, and that's going to do some call out lists. In this strategy, this is showing the initial event happens. On any change state, you re-notify, and when the alarm becomes acknowledged, you go ahead and you can stop the strategy. Now, the other version of our tactics we have, which is the strategies we have, is called the advanced strategy. And that's working with the advanced license and the advanced tactic. Okay, so we have our communications and troubleshooting. This is that, Okay, the communication troubleshooting one. Now I showed you previously the advanced tactic. Here's the advanced strategy that goes along with it. And in here you can do things, initial event happens, start that tactic. Until the alarm becomes acknowledged, you stop the strategy. You also do things like upon repeating timer, re-notify. So if we were to go over here and we were to look at this, is the sequence that goes on. The alarm happens, some tag, it's tied to this strategy, the initial event happens. The initial event happens and starts a tactic called system configuration. And here you can go ahead and you can select which tactic you want to go ahead and you can start off. But now that this tactic is started, if I look at this to see what this tactic does, now it's going through this process, notify the engineer, wait a minute, so on, notify the manager. So that strategy, the event has happened, the strategy has decided to point to this tactic. The tactic is in action. It's notifying the engineer 3 times, eventually notify the manager. So that's an example of our advanced tactics, our advanced strategies. Tactics, again, those are your call list of who to contact. Your strategies are the policies of the actions you need to take when event or tag comes through. Okay, continuing on with the left to right configuration. We're in 1, 2, 3. So up to this point, what we've done, we configured all of our roles, our schedules, our people. We've gave each person a connection. We define our gateway of how we want to get to the outside world. We also define in the contacts the notification process is, the acknowledgement process if the person is able to remotely acknowledge or not. We also went through and we defined in our notification process the tactic of the call list we want to have for certain alarms. We know that grouping, what they look like. We know who we want to contact for certain things. We also define the policies, the actions we want to take place using our strategies. And now we're into the alarming, and this is where it gets into configuring your specific SCADA. Now don't be alarmed. When you purchase the software, you're going to have the one that you purchased will be available. I actually have a higher license because we're Win911 and we want to have everything to demo. We have more information up here. So we're going to only talk about the SCADA that we're going to be using today, which is iFix. In iFix, you can go ahead and configure your source. Again, very similar process across other SCADAs. It's not so much this specific SCADA that, oh, I can't do this because I showed the iFix in the demo. It's very similar across the other SCADAs. But for iFix, for example, you need to go ahead and configure your alarm queue. Those of you familiar with iFix will know all about that. And you need to tie it into Win911. Again, we have the help window up here for anything for Win911 that you're not sure about. For this alarm queue, you need there's a whole sequence of events you need to go through. And this shows step by step how you do that and what you need to configure. Next, going back to those health alarms, your health alarms is something we highly recommend configuring because, for example, if iFix goes down, if it's not working, you need to be notified because that iFix is obviously a very critical part of your system. And if you're not receiving alarms, it's going to, in this example, if you didn't have this configured, it'd be because your iFix wasn't working. But if you notify somebody on that, you have the ability to address the issue and understand what's going on. For every event that comes through, we're going to kick off a strategy. For example, this strategy I didn't show you, but it's kicking off our critical system strategy, and it's related to our safety because this might be a critical part of our system having our SCADA down. I'm going to skip over filters for right now, but I'll show you watchdogs because it's kind of a common theme. But watchdogs, this is a similar practice where you can go ahead and you can, for example, if you have a heartbeat, if you're actively monitoring something in your PLC, you want to notify on if it goes down. This is a watchdog, and you can configure those to tie into a specific strategy as well. Now filters, this is a means, again, this is very similar across different SCADAs. Some don't offer this feature, but for your filters, you have the ability to know your alarm list and know what the common themes are. You can group your alarms using a filtering method. And in this example, I click a little chevron here, and you can filter on a block name, you filter by an area name, and then you can create a filter for your bringing your alarms in called new. So say, for example, you have a new packaging line, you could filter on this wildcard called new. And then anything that has a tag or block name called new will be brought in through whichever strategy you define. In this example, the strategy is tied to system configuration. And also you can give items, your tags, labels. Labels are configured up here in the label layout. Similar to how we created our roles, you can go through here and you can create a label, give it a name, safety, quality, whatever it might be. Again, those labels are very helpful for grouping and scrolling through a list of alarms. You can see by colors or just words jump out at you. It's easy to configure your alarms. Next, blocks. This shows you can bring in blocks individually. I have some blocks that are blocks that I already brought in. You can see the full list here. Also, you have over here the import, and this is a handy feature for iFix, for example. And what you're doing is you're going to bring in, you're going to attached to your node. You can filter things by block type, alarm, priority, description, whatever it might be. And this will an easier way to bring in your alarms. So previously I mentioned how now that at the end, that's the point where you're going to bring in your alarms and your tags, blocks, whatever you might call them. We've already configured our tactics. We already configured our strategies, our policies, what actions to take. We already have our people configured. Now we're going to bring those alarms in, and we're going to piece all the puzzles, gather all the pieces together, and complete the puzzle. We do the next here, and in this alarm queue, in this node, it's going to pull up with any alarms or tags that I haven't configured yet. I have a couple in here that I just called test, and in here you can click just by individual. You can do a search, and you can group things, and you can create labels for these. So, for example, you can create these called quality, and you can start doing some advanced escalation policies using our advanced software, and you can filter by quality. If it has a quality label, you create some route based on the time of day, or it goes to some person, or whatever it might be. For each item that you bring in, typically you're going to have a lot more than these because you're going to have a lot bigger SCADA, but I just have a couple that I have not brought in yet. And all these are, you can group these again, and you can go through and assign a strategy. And for example, like your advanced maintenance. Now these are going to be tied directly to your advanced maintenance strategy. So by the time I do the full import, let's just push these over here, and then you could finish and bring those over, and it's going to say, hey, I'm importing these 2 blocks, and eventually it'll go through. But basically, what this means is I already have my people configured, I already have my roles and schedules, I already have my configuration of what alarms I want to go do. Now I brought in my alarms, and I'm just pointing which alarms are going to which call out list, what's it going to look like. And that's the piecing all the puzzles together. We've done all the configuration up front, and now we're tying together all of our alarms all at the end. So that's a full rundown of how you configure our software. I'll just give you one last little demo of our software. Again, you can configure runtime hours, a couple other items might kick off and go to our technician. And eventually these alarms will go through to our email. And you can see them pop up one by one. And then if you want to, you can go ahead and as this comes up, I can do a reply all. And I can go ahead and send my notification over back to my SCADA. So I use that two-way direct connect method. Again, as a recap, you can use our log viewer, and you can go through, you can monitor the events, you can see what's acknowledged, what tactics and strategies are used. Now those might make more sense now that you watched the full video. But you can walk through the full configuration process, and as you're setting up a couple of these, I would first walk through your health alarms, make sure all those are working first during your commissioning and installation process. Test those out, make sure that your Win911 is working if something drops out, because if that drops out and you don't know about it, well, there goes your Win911, you're not going to receive your alarms. So make sure during your commissioning and testing process, you spend some time doing some of that watchdog. That way you know that your Win911 is ready and it's going to get all those alarms through, even if something goes wrong with your system. The other handy tool for this is once you do a couple of these alarms, test them out. Make sure that these alarms go into a couple of the right person's email. You can double click on some of these and you can configure through here, make sure that proper strategy, proper tactic are going through, which policies to take place, which call out lists to make. Those are your troubleshooting tools you have at hand. You also have Win911 tech support. If your customer is on support, you can call in and ask for additional help. But for now, that's the end of our run through of our demo. I'll just give you a quick recap on some of our software. So the value of our software is it's bringing the right notification to the right person every single time. And for example, with your maintenance, your technician, they have the ability to respond faster and reduce your downtime, increase your overall efficiency of your system. Your engineer, they can be piped into the system, be able to have notifications if there's quality updates, or just to have visibility in the system and see what's typically going wrong with their system. And with this, they can use for upgrades and planning and implementation of new features to your system. Your manager has visibility into the scheduling, and they can see what are the key issues going on, and they can work on increasing the overall system efficiency by knowing what's going on within your system. And finally, with our security, we didn't talk about this, but sometimes alarms are outside the realm of your typical control process. Maybe you need to notify the fire, maybe you need to notify the front desk that something has happened. Bringing the right notifications to the right person every time is all about having visibility into your system, keeping your system up and running, and keeping the dollars coming into your company's pockets. So once again, my name is Brian Arda, and I am an application engineer here with Win 911. If you have any further questions about our software configuration, please feel free to reach out to us, and we thank you for your time.